Will it boost the local economy, bring in billions of federal dollars, and ease traffic congestion? Or will it destroy hundreds of homes, businesses, and historic buildings, increase asthma and other diseases, and make Houston's roadways more dangerous still? The massive $7 billion widening of Interstate 45 sped into the month of March and hit a traffic jam of controversy. This week, the regional transportation body called the Transportation Policy Council, which doles out federal monies, passed a resolution endorsing the project. The Houston Chronicle reports that the vote carried by the thinnest possible margin, pitting suburban yes votes against Houston and Harris County, which opposed the project. The resolution calls to improve the project to address critics' concerns. Those concerns surfaced earlier this month when Harris County Judge Lina Hidalgo announced the county was filing a lawsuit against TxDOT to get them to stop the project and listen to neighborhood concerns. Days later, the Federal Highway Administration ordered a pause on TxDOT contracts so that the project's impact on vulnerable communities could be studied. On Tuesday this week, the community group Stop TxDOT I-45 brought these concerns to Mayor Sylvester Turner and the City Council meeting. To understand the controversial project, the People's News spoke to urban planner Jeff Speck in 2019. Speck has been a planner for more than 30 years and is the author of several books, including Walkable City, How Downtown Can Save America One Step at a Time. He discussed the community impact and a city planning truth that the project backers are butting up against, that more roads means more congestion.
According to the documents that are public, the highway will destroy 1,235 units of housing, holding about 5,000 people. In addition, it's going to plow through 331 existing businesses that apparently hold 25,000 jobs. And 25,000, and that's all predicted to add up to $135 million annually in lost property and sales tax to the city. So that's a huge impact. And then remarkably, there's this town called Independence Heights, which is the first town incorporated by African Americans in the state of Texas, and it was left out of TxDOT's historical resources survey for the project. So you can see there's a lot of issues there. That town is going to lose its historic Baptist church, and the folks I talked to who are going to be displaced from their homes, and the pastor of that church who I spoke to made it very clear that the way that TxDOT values their property, there's no way that they can recreate on a different site what they currently have. You know, building codes are different, costs are different. They're not going to be able to land on their feet with what they're being paid.
You made a couple of very strong statements I'm sure are very contrarian right now. So that's what intrigued me about your article.
Well, they're contrarian in Houston, but around the planning world, they're absolutely standard. And it's very frustrating to us who do this professionally that the general public still thinks, for example, that you can solve traffic by adding more lanes, which we all know you can't do, and other things like that. You want to spread the news. It's actually good news because it stops you from wasting money. But people in some places haven't heard the arguments, or I think that they're not contrarian as much as they're counterintuitive. It seems pretty natural if a street is choking on traffic. It seems pretty natural to think that adding more lanes would cause the traffic to go away. Unfortunately, the data just shows that it doesn't.
When you talk about congestion, which I think is probably the prime argument for a project like this, could you also include that concept of induced demand and explain how a larger freeway does not relieve congestion?
Yeah, I mean, that is my principal argument, and it's very clear. There's something called the fundamental law of highway congestion. That's the title that was taken from the paper that was presented at the Paris School of Economics. It did a ton of the academics did a ton of research on highway expansions across the U.S. Especially, and the data show very clearly that for any bit of new capacity that you give to a congested road, that new capacity is immediately taken up by about 40%, is immediately taken up about 40% with new trips. But within 4 years, it's 100% taken up by new trips. So investment after investment in a city's highway system have proven to be successful in lengthening trips, lengthening commutes, lengthening commuting times, but not reducing the amount of congestion. And the reason for this is that in congested systems, only in congested systems, but in congested systems, the principal constraint to driving is congestion. And that's the operative phrase. If the principal constraint to driving is congestion, then when you remove that congestion, you change people's behaviors. You cause people to drive more. You cause them to move further from their work. You cause them to take less transit. What's shocking about hearing this argument in Texas, and particularly in Houston, is that whenever anyone around the U.S., I saw this recently in an article from Oregon, whenever anyone in the U.S. is trying to argue about induced demand, they bring up Houston. They bring up the Katy Freeway. And there's a wonderful article I read online that's called, Reduce Congestion, Katy Didn't. And it has all the data from the Katy Freeway, which show very clearly that within 4 years of making the Katy Freeway the widest highway on earth, spending $2.8 billion, which seemed like a, inconceivable amount, which is of course perhaps a third of what I-45 is going to cost. But they spent that money. They widened Katy into the world's widest highway. Within 4 years, the morning commutes were taking 30% longer than before, and the evening commutes were taking 55% longer. So you own the poster child for induced demand in your city, and yet everyone else seems to have learned from it, except Houston. It's just a folly to think that you can fight congestion, fight car crashes, and fight tailpipe emissions by welcoming more driving. And what this highway expansion does is it welcomes more driving. It welcomes more high-speed driving. It welcomes more high-carbon driving. And it welcomes more congestion. And that's your future. The Katy Freeway proves it. And by the way, there's no highway expansions that disprove it, that when you have a congested system, the congestion will return after you expand it.
For the People's News, this is John Moeller reporting.